The US has an enemy it's been battling, but is struggling to defeat. The enemy? Fentanyl. See, it's a drug so potent that it's killing an estimated 150 Americans daily, and it has created an epidemic of epic proportions across the country. You see, the US is fighting this war on all fronts, a war against chemical to be precise, one it may never win. So, exactly what is fentanyl, and how do Chinese and Mexican cartels fit in? I'm Abdul Hai, and this is Bite Sized, where we bring you the gist of issues that matter with a little added spice to spark your curiosity and get you to ask the right questions. You've probably seen videos of people staggering on the streets, looking almost like zombies, some unable to stand, others completely frozen, their bodies contorted like statues. The cause? Fentanyl. And not the pharmaceutical kind, but the illicit kind. And yes, there is a difference. Pharmaceutical grade fentanyl is a synthetic opioid created back in 1959 by a Belgian chemist as a revolutionary painkiller. Think of it as a supercharged version of morphine, but almost 100 times stronger. It's also used as an anesthetic agent for surgeries and to provide pain relief to cancer patients. Unlike morphine, fentanyl kicks in quicker, kills the pain better, and fades away faster. It's also much cheaper, and this has perhaps become more of a curse than a blessing. The key word here is cheap, a word that had Mexican cartels licking their lips. So how do people get addicted to fentanyl? See, the US has a much publicized opioid crisis, mainly fostered by the aggressive marketing of opioids by pharmaceutical companies during the 90s and overprescription of opioids to patients. At the time, Big Pharma said opioids were non-addictive, but Americans got addicted. This meant stricter regulations on prescription opioids, which made them more difficult for addicts to access. This opened up a window of opportunities for drug cartels, which began smuggling opioids into the US. But there was a catch. The opioids were laced with fentanyl in order to get more people addicted and to bring in more money for the cartels. Cartels also began using the chemical in common narcotics like cocaine and heroin. This is where the war began. See, fentanyl's potency is exceptionally high. For perspective, a dose as small as 2 milligrams of pure fentanyl, the size of a grain of salt, can be fatal for an adult, and sometimes exposure without precaution can also be deadly. Heroin addicts generally use a jab of heroin a day due to the narcotic's slow effect, but fentanyl kicks in and wears off faster. This causes fentanyl addicts to double or even triple their intake, which ultimately leads to overdoses or death. This is a cop who was exposed to fentanyl. Watch how he freezes and loses control of his body. Luckily, his partner had Narcan, an opioid antagonist that helps block fentanyl's effects.
Hey man, your pulse feels great, alright? It's good, normal.
Illicit fentanyl is responsible for an estimated 55,000 deaths a year in the US, making it the leading cause of deaths for Americans aged 18 to 49. That is more than car accidents, guns, or any disease. For clarification purposes, we're not talking about pharmaceutical grade fentanyl, we're talking about the fentanyl illegally manufactured in clandestine labs, where legal prescription drugs are laced with a chemical which is also cut into narcotics like heroin, cocaine, and crystal meth. There's a lot to unpack, I know, but stay with me. As you may have guessed, the problem runs deeper, and China plays a big role alongside the Mexican cartels at the center of the fentanyl trade. See, before 2019, anyone could order ready-made fentanyl off the internet from China. China was and still is the primary source of the chemicals used in the production of fentanyl, with companies like Yuancheng Chemicals, based in Wuhan, as major players in the fentanyl production line, being part of a larger network of companies that produce the precursors used to make the drug. At the time, international pressure mounted and China outlawed the production of ready-made fentanyl. Beijing also began cracking down on companies producing it. Manufacturers could therefore no longer export the finished product, so they began exporting its raw precursors, which was still legal. US-China political and economic relations soured over the years, and by August 2022, China suspended all counter-narcotics and law enforcement cooperations with the US. According to reports, China even began giving rebates for value-added tax on precursors. This was very bad news for the US. Precursor chemicals are now being legally shipped from China to Mexico, where cartels manufacture fentanyl in their own labs. They cut fentanyl with narcotics like heroin and cocaine to maximize profits. They also smuggle their own brand of fentanyl into the US. Once these fentanyl-infused narcotics hit the streets, the dangers grow for unsuspecting users. See, dealers even go as far as lacing generic street versions of prescription medication like Xanax, Adderall, and oxycodone with fentanyl to make them more addictive, which creates a bigger customer base. Unwitting users think they are taking under-the-counter prescription pills when in fact they're ingesting fentanyl. This, as you may have deduced, is killing both fentanyl addicts and non-addicts alike. One of these victims was the musician Prince, who died of an overdose from fentanyl-laced oxycodone pills. In the end, it's all about the money. The economics of the illegal fentanyl trade is staggering. In Mexico's Sinaloa, 5 kilograms of fentanyl, enough to kill over 2 million people, costs around $15,000 US. Once it hits the US, the street value can skyrocket to around $100,000. And to pay their suppliers in China, cartels use different tactics like money laundering, while some reports have even linked illegal exotic animal trading as part of these deals. So why can't the US effectively fight this epidemic? Well, the problem lies in a mix of geopolitical tensions, economic factors, and the adaptability of traffickers in China and the US. Both nations have been engaged in something of a Cold War on all fronts, with some analysts saying that this is China's way of fighting its rival from within. Now, the illegal economic ecosystem created by illegal fentanyl and smuggled synthetic opioids is financially hurting the US. The fentanyl public health crisis continues to deal a massive blow to the American economy. In 2023, fentanyl overdoses cost the country over $1 trillion, accounted for by the reduction in productivity caused by a shrinking workforce due to the number of addicts, extra healthcare expenses, criminal justice costs, and funding for agencies on the front lines of the epidemic. With solutions being tricky to find since cartels are constantly improvising and demand increasing by the day, will the US ever be able to defeat its seemingly unbeatable enemy?